I'm really excited to be here today. Let's all stand up for a moment. We're going to start with a little quiz for everybody. And one of our brands is called Source Movement. So we'll get up, we'll move around. Take a nice breath in, lift your arms up nice and high. Just hold up for a moment. Reach up, look up. Yeah, and then just exhale, let your arms come down. So this is a lot. Like, there's a lot of content that's just delivered to you. And I don't know about you, but when I'm at events like this, I start to think like, I'm not going to get it all. What am I going to remember it? And the mind starts to spin a little bit. Just trust that everything that you've received is exactly what you need to receive. And it's all right there for you so that we can be really present for what's coming. And that'll be a theme that goes throughout the weekend. Cool? Awesome. So we're going to start with a little quiz. Have you... No. Whoa, still up. My bad. Unclear direction. So we talk about, what I'm here to talk about is self-limiting beliefs and how that relates to our lives and our businesses and everything else. We'll get all into that. But I just want to start with a little quiz, just a baseline where everybody's at and what you experience in your daily lives. So when we talk about agitation and suffering, right? Conflict, sadness, anger, all those kinds of things that will create some kind of agitation or suffering in our lives. Have you, if you've experienced that in the last 10 days, stay standing. Honest group. Okay, so far so good. 7 days. 3 days. Cool. 24 hours. Cool. Still, yeah. Hey, I'm still standing. I just want to all I really want to know is how many honest people there are in the group, you know. We experience it. We know it every single day. So the question is, are we taking actions from that place? Are we making decisions from that place of suffering, of conflict? How many choices do we make from that place? How might that affect the people around us? Not yet. Yeah, good question. So the question becomes is what have we done or what are we doing? And you're welcome to have a seat now if you want. And this is just one variation, you know, anger is one of my favorite go-tos. So, is what happens, like what do we do from that place? We think that our own happiness or our own peace of mind is only important to us a lot of times. And it's because we don't really see the consequences of how that reflects in our world, how it affects in our parenting, how it affects in our businesses, how we affect our team if you're running a business. All of those things come through. And as we're sensitive to it, we pick that up from one another, whether it's conscious or subconscious. Those things are there for us. All right? So I don't mean to throw it out there in such a heavy way, but what we really want to consider is like, what is possible? What is possible for us? Do you think that if we were able to make decisions consistently from a place that was grounded, peaceful, clear, focused, and absolutely centered with our highest ideals, do you think that those decisions would be more powerful? 100%, no question. But then how many times do we get taken away from that, right? So my last question for this is, do you believe that that is possible? Do you believe that it's possible to have perfect relationships? Do you believe that it's possible to make those decisions all the time? Do you believe in your life and in your business that it's possible, in other words, to live free from suffering? You don't have to answer that, but I just throw it out there because it's an important question. Do you even believe that it's possible? So, why is this important to me? Well, most people do not believe that this is possible. I am an expert in mindset mastery. I've studied human beings for quite a long time. I'll get into that a little bit with my story. And the number one problem that I found is, as Donna talked about with how we work with this in businesses and as I've seen throughout my life and career, is that this is most people's reality, and this is what they believe life is all about. Riding a roller coaster. And we all talk about it. Oh, it's got its ups and downs. And yes, absolutely, those things absolutely do exist. But people do not believe, many people I should say, do not believe that there is an existence outside of that paradigm. So they ride the roller coaster again, and we see the endless drama in our world. You wouldn't believe what we saw in owning a yoga studio. Because you think like the yoga people, right? Like they're all zenned out and everything. You know? Same drama. It's people everywhere because people are at the center of it. So when we live from that place, it becomes that. And then what happens is we have those little moments here and there of everything's in its right place and everything's okay and now I can be happy. Now it's all balanced. I love that one. I want more balance in my life. Cool. Yeah, let's talk about that. But at the end of the day, there's those little glimpses, and then we wind up living our lives for these little moments where everything's just okay, and now we can relax and be happy. And I don't know about you, as entrepreneurs or people that work in that field and around those people, that those moments when everything is in its right place and we're able to just take a moment and look around are very few and far between. So if we do not find a way to create that in action in our lives, we're going to be running and chasing a lot. And I like roller coasters, but not that much. So there might be another way. And that's what we're here to talk about is basically tapping into the power of your peak potential state. That's what I help people do, is find that within themselves, create a space within ourselves that is not touchable by the outside world, except in the most positive and productive of ways. So we help to create that space so that we always have that available to us. Make sense? Yeah. So talk a little bit about what I do and why am I interested in this? Well, it starts way back when, but I'll start in my musician years. I've been a professional musician for 25 years, and I'm a trumpet player, as you can see. So I don't know if you recognize this about the trumpet, but you can do a lot of damage with a trumpet. Like it's a loud instrument. And when you miss, everybody knows that you miss. Yeah, everybody knows it. So in an orchestra, whatever it is, I played in a lot of orchestras and also freelance gigs. So there's this constant need to really be on, to really be accurate with what you do, very, very accurate with it. And then there's all of these external circumstances. So as a freelance musician, you never know what you're walking into, you know, whether it be a club gig where there's drunk people everywhere and, you know, yelling and hollering and who knows what, and you're trying to play really accurately because people are relying on you and they'll all know if you miss. Like they won't hear anything else that you play, but they'll hear that note that you miss. They're like, oh, that trumpet player just missed a note, you know? Oh, okay, now you're listening. Cool. So there's all these other things. And so it became really necessary to find a place that inside that was peaceful, that was centered and focused so that we're able to project forth the most positive performance of that. So we did that. I did that for years and still perform, not as much these exact days, but looking forward to getting back to it. It really came down to that. And I struggled personally with a lot of performance anxiety, that worry about, you know, when I step up on stage, like, what are people going to think? Is it going to be okay? Am I going to get it right? And all these kinds of things. And of course, as a trumpet player, if you don't, everybody knows. So sooner or later, I happened into a job with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And this was a really exciting time for me. I knew nothing about orchestra administration. The reason that I got the job was really just because of who I am and how I am. So my boss knew I didn't know anything about what I was doing, but he liked the way I was with people. So personnel manager is a good job for somebody like that. Basically what I did is the liaison between the musicians and between the management. So I would administer the contract, and sooner or later people found out that, sooner actually rather than later, that I'm a really good listener. So all of those people would come by my desk with their problems and what's going on in their lives, and this one and that one. And the orchestra is a very fascinating place. if you don't know this, we talked about this last night at dinner, and it's probably, you may not realize it when you're watching it, but it's one of the most intense work environments that you could possibly imagine, because there's no cubicles for anybody. There's no place for them to retreat. And when they step on stage, they are on. And there's a dictator on the podium who will point out anything that's not working, and he may do it in a way that's very demeaning or just not positive at all in order to assert some kind of authority. And then there's all these relationships between your musicians, the musicians there, who are all top quality, absolutely the best in the field, who will judge what you do. And then perfection is the standard. That's baseline, that's starting. Anything above that is cool. That's what makes a great artist. But perfection is absolutely required. So when you put all of these intense artistic personalities into a place, and then you pressurize them like that, some really fascinating things start to happen. And these things start to come out, and they all came to my desk. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. I don't really know what to do with this, but I'm sure there's something for me to learn. And so I studied these people, and I studied them again and again, and they're at the top of their field. So I was really fascinated, like, how do they do this? Day in and day out, and they go out there, they put on these amazing performances. And some people had strategies that really worked well, and some people didn't. And the people that had ones that worked well were cool. They come in, they do their job, they play stuff that you just would not believe. You have a great conversation after the gig, and it's all good. And then others go through their cycles of sickness and kind of health, and then they're happy, and then they're sad, and all these things, and they're just riding the roller coaster. So I was destined. I was really determined to figure out this. And the next piece that I did with that is I ran auditions for the orchestra. So literally thousands upon thousands of auditions that I sat on stage for and watched these people. And this was a pinnacle moment in their life, because they're coming to audition for a job which is a destination orchestra. And if they win it, it's a big deal. It'll change their whole life. So to watch how people reacted in that situation, how they dealt with it, and what was the difference between the people who won and the people who lost. Fascinating. And I can tell you that it really was not a big thing. It was 5% maybe, if that, 1%. 5 people there absolutely qualified to do the job, 1 person wins. Why? Right? It's just a burning question for me. And I looked at it and watched it and studied it for years. But eventually my time with that organization kind of came to a close, and I just, I was in a place where you're limited by a contract, and you're limited by how you can work with people in that situation. And there's certain things that I can't say that I just really would want to say to somebody, and just sit them down and say, look, if you want to stop this, we can really talk about it, but I couldn't do it. So I got into yoga. So my first yoga teacher's here, Catherine. She changed my life. I don't know if she knew that or not, but she actually did. And what it took was that one person who asked me the question, or you didn't even ask it as a question. She said, hey, you'd probably be a good yoga teacher. You should really think about this. And I thought, wow, I never considered it before that, but I did. And it changed my whole life, right? That one moment. Because I thought, this is cool, and it helped me. And like, how could I work with other people in that way? So I'm going to go and be a yoga teacher. So it came to this point in the organization where I was there, and I finally, the worth of it, my own self-worth of being able to ask for a raise and things like that. I finally asked for a raise, and I sit down in the office, and my boss is there, and his boss is there, and we're all sitting together. And it had been a long time coming. So I finally did it. I finally asked the question. We sat down, and they gave me a raise, right? And I was happy. I was like, okay, cool. This is really cool. This is a demanding job, because you're always, beholden to the orchestra schedule. There's a lot to do. And right after that, the conversation took a really sharp turn, and it was right back to the same old corporate stuff. You better step up. You better start being more of a team player. You got to show up. You better be more of this, more of that, and don't ask for anything else. So I was like, wow. it took me a moment, and then it really flashed for me. This smile came across, and I was like, it was a moment of peace. And we're walking down the hallway back to our office, this long, long hallway. It's echoing, and all I heard was the footsteps. But I just remember feeling so peaceful because I knew that was the moment. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to live my life on somebody else's terms anymore. And nobody else gets to decide what I'm worth. So we talk about these moments of clarity, and I see as a coach so many times when we have a hard time making a decision about things and people struggle and it's all about the money and it's all about the time. I don't have the money, I don't have the time, I can't do it, and all these little things. I'm here to tell you that when you're in that place, you say you don't know until you know, right? That's how you know. When money doesn't matter anymore, when time doesn't matter anymore, when it doesn't matter what anybody thinks of you anymore, that's when you're in the place, and that's how you make a decision. And then it doesn't matter. So I quit the job, and I go to teach yoga, which is totally insane, by the way, right? Normal people don't do that. You know, I had a job, it benefits, steady paycheck, all that stuff. I could have still done some of that, but I'm like, screw it, I'm out. I'm going to go teach yoga. Cool. And a lot of my friends are kind of by the sidelines like, yeah, like, cool, good for you. And I'm thinking, yay. And then, like, sooner or later, I start to, like, realize what I've done. And I'm thinking this through, and I start to get scared, right? And that's when the fear starts to creep back in. And now I'm thinking, I don't know if I can do this. Did I do the right thing? And then all this time I'm finding in my relationship, is just not what I was really wanting it to be. And I just thought everything, like, I thought, oh, if I could just do it on my own terms, like, everything's gonna be okay. I'll just be able to do it just like I want, and I'll be so happy. And what I realized was that as that fear started to creep in, I actually started to spiral into a depression. And it was a really tough time. My relationship was falling apart. She was in a really bad place. I was in a really bad place. I wanted to help her, but I couldn't. I couldn't really even help myself. So there was a real problem there. So I did what many musicians will do, is I started doing more drugs. And I just find myself like just down in the basement, just escaping, you know, smoke another bowl or whatever it was, go on a weekend bender. I was big on the weekend benders, got into some pharmaceuticals, that was good fun. Just because I just wanted to get out of it, you know, because I couldn't look around at what I had done, and I couldn't really face the fear, and I was in this job and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't step in fully, and I was just terrified by it. And then I'm the yoga guy, and I'm teaching people about connection, and I'm looking at my own life. You know, I'm getting stoned, I'm doing drugs, I'm just not living the life. So the shame, you know, of just not feeling congruent with my real values, the disappointment, all of that came full bloom right there. And I was like, wow. And I had a moment with a teacher of mine who finally sat me down. She looked me dead in the eye, and it was just a super simple question. She just looked at me and she said, "What the hell are you doing?" And it was a moment of awareness where I saw so clearly the patterns, and I saw everything that I'd been doing to myself, and I saw that lack of ability to step in fully and how it was reflecting in my life. And it was the same old patterns again and again. And in that moment of awareness, I had a new choice, and that was the moment that I changed. I changed the whole game. Like the drugs, that was all done. No more of that. The relationship, unfortunately, had to end. It turned out to be best for both of us, but it was what was needed at the time. And from that moment forward, that's when I started to really step into my path as a yoga teacher. And what I was really fascinated with was this process of human transformation and how we impact each other's lives. And what does it take for a person to make a choice to change their life in a positive way? What happens in that moment? What is that extra 5% that we bring to it that changes the whole game? What is that? So I became fascinated with it. I started to step in fully and just be myself. And that's when the whole game changed. I built a great following as a yoga teacher. Our studio was really successful. We had great impact on people's lives. And the next evolution of that for me was very natural into coaching and consulting. was because, again, I'm teaching a yoga class and there's a lot going on there. Stick your butt in the air and fold forward and breathe in and all this stuff. And oh, by the way, let's think about how we're living our lives. So, which is cool. It works, right? But I just wanted to have deeper conversations about that. So that's how I got into coaching and consulting. And that's really what this is about for me. It's the process of human transformation. It's how we live our lives, how we make our choices, how we impact the lives of others, and how we live in our fullest potential in everything that we do. So that's really what this is about. So I ask again, what do you believe is possible for your life? If you were able to step into it and really play full out 100%, nothing left on the table, what's possible for you? What's possible for your business, your relationships, your parenting? The only unsolvable problem is the one we believe to be unsolvable. And that's what a lot of people see as problems. So what do we have? What happens when we step into that place of potential, when we start to see the potential within the problems? What happens from that place? How do we take those things and learn from it in a way that we can really grow? That's why we talk about this in business. I could just as easily coach people on personal relationships and things like that. But I feel like the most potential is in business because it's the biggest untapped resource, because we separate it. I'm great, I do this, I do my thing at work and then I bring it home, and we don't connect our spiritual growth or our personal growth to our businesses in such a powerful way. But that's where all the potential is, because that's where we're pressurized the most. That's where it really comes out, because it's on the line, right? Especially as an entrepreneur, you're laying it on the line. You're going for it. We all know, everybody know what that feels like? Being pressurized like that, having it all on the line. Raise a hand if you know that. Okay, good. Just checking I'm in the right room. I know, right? It's heavy. There's a lot going on there. And that's the biggest opportunity, though, because that's where all of our buttons get pushed. That's where all the flags go off. That's the moment of opportunity. How do we take that? What is possible when we're able to take each and every one of those things and really use it to its fullest to see ourselves from a new perspective? Big possibility, big opportunity. There's a common denominator in everything. The common denominator in all of our relationships, all of my horrible relationships, all of my awesome relationships, is a common denominator in all of our problems. It always comes back home, right? So understanding ourselves becomes first and foremost. So that's why we always start there. It becomes the very most important thing, because it then goes and it naturally follows that if there is anything worth mastering in this world, it is ourselves. Because whatever's coming our way, it's filtered through us. And if we are able to master the way that we respond to everything that comes our way, we have effectively mastered the world. That's how we create a space where it doesn't matter what comes our way. It doesn't matter how it makes us feel. We become the unshakable pillar. And that's the kind of leadership that we need today. Anybody else agree with that? Yeah. You can see it all over the place where people are not leading from that place. They're making choices from conflicted and selfish places, and it's destroying our world. It's nothing new. It's been happening for a really long time. But now is the time for us to make a change. And it happens with people like this, in rooms like this, where we start to explore ourselves in different ways. We start to look at things from new perspectives. We start to understand our own potential in what we can create in the world. And that's where we start to make that change. That's why mastering ourselves is the most important thing, because otherwise we're riding the roller coaster. 100%. So let's talk about that. Really simple. What a human being is. There's three main components, and I'll break them down for you. The body, very simple, is our vehicle. It doesn't act on its own. It needs direction. So that direction will come from one of two places. The first one is the mind, okay? And let me make a differentiation here. This is unique to the philosophy that I've studied There's nothing wrong with it. It's just semantics, but I just want to be clear so that we're all on the same page with it. The mind is equated with the heart, right? So this is the center of emotions. It's the center of our preferences, our likes and dislikes. So the nature of there's nothing good or bad about the mind, by the way. It has a certain quality about it, and this is what it is. This is where, in the mind or in our emotions, it becomes what we like and what we don't like. That's the mind likes what it likes, it doesn't like what it doesn't like. It wants what it wants, right? It gets angry when it doesn't get it. Normal. Or it gets sad. Center for impulse. The quality of the mind is that it lacks a shape and a form. So it's very susceptible to the outside world. When circumstances come into play with that, it affects it, right? We have that natural response, that emotional response to something. So if we act from that place, we become extremely dependent on the outside world. This is where you find people who set up codependent relationships because that person makes them feel a certain way. And in order to feel that way, they need to have that person. And when that person's disposition changes, then your disposition changes. Anybody see the problem in that? That's not, I mean, you could do it, but the more that you live from that mind space or that purely emotional space, what happens from that space is that you go insane. You'll see very eccentric people, who are they're kind of wild with their eccentricity and how they, it's this thing and it's that thing, and they're very interesting and fun to be around, but there's no direction. There's no real direction there. So this is where you find your uber creative people who don't get anything done. It's because they live from that mind space. It's your inner 5-year-old. The best way to think about this quality of ourselves is the inner 5-year-old. Now, you could leave a 5-year-old alone in the house for a while, and everything might be okay. Or the place might be on fire. Roll the dice, I don't know. It could be either. Then, the 5-year-old could tear the place to shreds. Who knows? Because they're a 5-year-old, right? You would never expect a 5-year-old to do anything different. You might be surprised if the place is on fire, like, wow, my place is on fire. But when you stop and think about it, you're like, I left a 5-year-old in the house. Okay. So that's the nature of the mind. And now I found this very interesting because when I was looking for images, it's so much fun to put these presentations together because I'm Googling my images and everything. But what I found was a lot of battle. Like there was always this balance between the head and the heart and this battle between the two. Do you live from your head or do you live from your heart? And I personally think that's totally unnecessary, but we'll talk about that more later. The next piece of equipment, and this is the key piece of equipment that makes us human beings, that really lets us be a human being, is our intellect. So this is the place where that governs, that has the ability to govern an emotion. It contemplates thoughts and ideas. This is the home of thought and idea. And it judges, it discerns. I don't mean that in a negative way, by the way, judging. It's assessing is probably a better word for that, is just to clearly see what it is. This is your home of objectivity. So when we're stuck in an intellectual, in a mental or an emotional place, we get entangled with it, and we can't see objectively from that place. The intellect is the place that looks at it, steps above and takes a 10,000-foot view and says, hey, I wonder what's really going on here. This is where we're able to see the patterns of the mind from a much more clear place. It discerns what's right from wrong, and it always gives us the moment of choice, which is the most special moment for a human being, our ability to choose our actions and not live from a base animal nature. That's what makes a human being, our connection to one another. So you could think about that as the parent. The great differentiation here is a really simple example. If you have a diabetic, okay, they know that sugar is bad for them. But candy tastes good, really good. And so if the diabetic's mind is running the show, it'll direct the hand to pick up the candy and unwrap it and eat it. But if their intellect is running the show, it'll know that that candy can destroy them, and it'll stop it and choose something else. So that's the biggest difference between the two. It is the fundamental thing that is lacking in so many ways in our world. We do not have a health crisis. We don't have a financial crisis. We don't really even have a leadership crisis. What we have is a total lack of intellect because people cannot choose wisely. They cannot choose from an objective place. Greed takes over. Anger takes over. Spite, ideology takes over. And then they make choices from that place. And that's the reason that we see the problems that we do. So that is the fundamental problem. But the intellect alone is not the answer. What it really is a combination of the two. So if we were to say that, then it's really like, you can parent as a authoritarian or a dictator and just, your child's going to do what you say it's going to do. What's going to happen with that child? It gets repressed, right? And then they act out in all these crazy ways, which is what happens when people repress themselves. The best way to really look at this and to understand that these two components, they're inseparable, and you can bring them together in such a positive way, is to take all of the positive qualities of our emotions and to direct them. But it comes from an intellectual place. It comes from an understanding or an objective place. Different from intelligence, right? It's an objective place. And that's where we really take all of our humanity, all of our emotion, all of the things that connects us, all of our want to have an impact in somebody else's life, to feel like we meant something to somebody. And we use our emotion in a positive way in order to direct that. And it's from that place. If you think about a musician, right? They can sit there and play technically perfect, but nobody really wants to listen to that. We want to know that there's a human being in there. So in our businesses, as we run our lives, as we parent, whatever it is that you're into, but we'll just talk about the businesses in that, how we motivate our teams, how we connect with our teams, how we connect with our clients. It's using it. It's using those emotions in a really positive way. All this will come together and create our human personality. So to look at that really from a I always trip out on this. I just think it's the most fascinating thing of what makes the human personality, and what all the factors that go into this. Well, we're conditioned, right? So it forms the ideas in our heads. We're conditioned by social things, our family. Who knows how far back your family goes and what those lineages are, right? That go all the way back through the family, and how that's a very interesting way to put it. Was that in the mother's womb, right, a fetus has all of the eggs already formed. So as my mother was in her mother's womb, as my mother was in my grandmother's womb, then my great-grandmother, right, was already there, right? So it goes back already so far. And that's years. Like, that goes back to the beginning of the century. And this is just a human genetics, right? It's that simple. And when you look at all that, and then look at all the ideas that are filtered through our culture, all these things that are filtered through us in societal ways, what we're taught from our family, what we learned from our friends, what it means to be a man or a woman. Did you ever wonder that? Like, what would I be like as the opposite sex? I always wondered that about, like, well, I don't know what kind of a woman I would be. Just think about that. But that one little thing, it's that one little thing that changes it, and your whole life changes. So all of this goes into filter your personality. And what is that but how we receive the world, and then how we respond to the world, how we process that information and then take actions based on what we've taken in. And then all the experiences, but not just the experiences, it's how we received the experiences, and then how we acted that out, and then how that created that endless cycle moving forward to create, karma, if you want to call it that, cause and effect, basically. Cause and effect. And then it creates more, and then our personality goes on it. So you can trip out on this for years, and just go down the rabbit hole, and all the way at the bottom of that rabbit hole is, wow, we all come from the same place, and we're all one. Whoa. Okay, that's a topic for another time. But what does it wind up being? Right? Put the reins on there. What does it wind up being? This is the Jackson Pollock's convergence. It all converges into this human being, this human personality that we have, that we meet the world with. Some people look like this, right? It's kind of a smattering. So we've got all these different ideas that I get brushed onto the thing, and we're like, wow, like it's hard to make any sense of that because it's just ideas layered over ideas, layered over ideas, and none of which are really closely examined. Some people look more like this, where they all filter and spiral in to create this perfect moment. And in that perfect moment, we make great choices. We have an amazing impact in the world, and then that ripples out in the most positive ways. So you can see there's just the convergence at the middle. Comes from all over because we're all connected at that level. It comes together in this unique personality that is you. And you are by far your greatest asset. There's nothing outside of you that is more valuable or more powerful than you. And then we take that and we put it to the best use, and it ripples out in ways that we can't even imagine. One person asked me a question. Hey, do you think you might like to teach some yoga? Changes your whole life. How many questions like that for you, have come about? How many times have you been that one person that asked the question? So that's why the story becomes so important. That's you. That's your mode of human connection. We always think we're different. But the fact of the matter is that the anger that I experience is the same. I experience anger the same as my mother does, who's sitting in the back row. Hi, Mom. My sadness is her sadness. My joy is her joy. We experience these emotions in the same way. So when we really dial it down and we connect with each other in that way, that really specific human connection, that's where our power is. However, this is a big however. If we remain stuck in our story, that's all it will ever be. And we will be destined to run the same patterns endlessly. This is where you see people who are constantly running the same patterns throughout their entire life. And we look at them, sometimes we look at them as the outsider and we're like, oh my God, are you really doing that again? But they do it again and again and again because they believe that's who they are. That's who they believe they are. And that's what it really comes down to. What do we believe about who we are? There's a belief that governs absolutely everything about us. Everything that we do. Who we believe we are in relationships, who we believe we are in our business, who we think we're supposed to be, all of those things are governed. Everything that we do is governed by a belief, conscious or unconscious. It's all there. So the question becomes, what do you believe? I picked a hot button here because that's a big one. For people who always have weird things around money. I know I did. What do you believe about money? Just think about it. You can jot it down if you want. If you were to think about money, like what's the first 3 things that pop into your head? Root of all evil, maybe? Dirty. Greed. I don't know. Whatever it is for you, it could be totally different. What do you believe about rich people? Those people. Right? Where did those ideas come from? What do you believe about wealth? What do you believe about work? What do you believe about success? What do you believe about love? So there's a, now it always cracks me up. Do you ever feel like that? That's how a lot of people live their lives, right? They feel like a puppet, but they don't know who's holding the strings. And that's the great illusion of it all, is that we're holding the strings. We just don't always see it. So we get stuck in that place. And if there's any doubt about that, yeah, let's do this. I'm going to do it anyway. So, okay, take a moment, grab something to write on. Make sure you've got something to write on. Everybody good with that? take a moment, close your eyes for a moment. We're going to clear it out here. Take a full breath in, hold it, let it go through your mouth. The mantra is, I am wealthy beyond measure. So what you're going to do when I tell you is you're going to open up your eyes and you're going to write, I'm wealthy without measure on your paper. And then, after you finish that, you're going to go right into it. You're going to write whatever popped up in your mind while you were writing that. Okay? Whatever thought pops into your mind, write it down right after that. Everybody ready? Simple exercise. Write it 5 times. Breathe in. Exhale and write. The little voice that chimes in and says, no, you're not. That's stupid. You're lying. Right? That's the inner critic. Still think your beliefs may not be important because that little voice is there all the time. We just don't always listen to it. You just gave it a place to be expressed. And awareness is the number one thing. When we talk about breaking through this and changing these things, it's really not a huge magical secret. I mean, there's a personal touch and a one-on-one thing, I think, to really talk this through with somebody that knows it, that it's helpful. But at the end of the day, we give ourselves a place so that we can observe what's really going on. And through the process of observation or inquiry, we become aware of it. And in that place of awareness is where we have a choice. It's that place where I looked at my situation and my job, and I realized there's no choice here. I can sell out the rest of my life to work for somebody else and be limited by what I do, or I can take a chance and I can go do my own thing and really express myself and really lay it all on the line. But without the awareness, we just keep running the same pattern. So a simple exercise like that, as silly as it may seem, when it highlights some of the story that goes on underneath, then we can start to look at it from a new perspective. You don't have to accept it as right or wrong. You don't even have to judge it as bad, even if your inner critic was really harsh. You just look at it and say, wow, isn't that fascinating? Now what? And we start to ask some questions. What's behind that? What's next? And so we can look at it from a whole new perspective. And then from there, it really just becomes this process of alignment. So this gets into the work that I do with corporations to help them align these things. So we get a look at, who is the human being behind this? What is the quality of leadership? Where is it coming from? And then we take that and we start to align it with their values. What do they really believe? What do they really want to create for their lives? The values provide a really valuable map. They provide a great map to get where we want to get with it, to direct ourselves in a positive way so that we're actually creating with our businesses what we want to create. Instead of creating a prison, we're creating a mode of freedom, an ability to express, an ability to impact lives. Because many times entrepreneurs get into it. I'm sure there are some people in this room who created the business, and then what they really wound up creating was just another job for themselves that they chained themselves to. And they didn't really create it with the mindfulness of how to do it in a way that we could actually create the freedom that we want, ripple it out, and scale it in a way that can impact more and more lives in such a positive way. And we wind up feeling chained to it and stuck. So the value part of this, connecting it with the values, is really just about, I'll get to that. Lining up the whole system then. So once we understand what some of those beliefs are, once we start to really look outside the box, then we start to own what it is that we really value and bring it into focus so that then our action becomes that much more powerful. So one of the companies that I work with is Long-Term Care Resources. They're insurance guys. They sell long-term care insurance. My dad was an insurance salesman for 40 years for State Farm. So I really related to their story. There's major changes in the industry. They're really struggling in so many ways. And what it really came down to is an erosion of value, because in a literal way for them was because the products that they were selling were not as valuable as they used to be. And so as a sale, I don't know, well, you're entrepreneurs, so all of you sell. So selling, is another way to really pressurize yourself. It just puts it all out there. It's really another fascinating thing. So as they're selling, all of a sudden they don't really believe in what they're selling anymore. So from that place, they start to take on more stress, more anxiety. They don't feel directed in what they're doing. They feel frustrated, and they're starting to burn out, because it goes without saying that over time, that stress and anxiety will build up, and it will eventually burn people out if it's not addressed. So that was what was happening. So basically, the values was the core piece for them. It's a customized thing that we do. We work with people in a customized way. I don't do cookie cutter stuff. What I do is not for everybody. We really are going to dive in and have some real conversations about it. So, and customize something that is really going to be impactful for the business, for the whole team. We start from the top, because the leadership is number one important, but then we filter it down through the team. And that's what we did with this, is we trained their people. And there's simple values exercises and then discussion around it to help them understand. And immediately we got results. Immediately people were like, wow, like I hadn't really looked at it from that perspective. All of a sudden they felt reconnected to their story. They remembered why the hell they got into it in the first place. And they started to use that more effectively again, and they started to understand the value of what they were doing and connect it with the values of the organization, and the whole system started to come into alignment. And we're still at the very beginning phases of it. So I'm super excited to see what's going to happen with this, because this is a big organization. It's a multi-million-dollar organization, and hundreds of agents scattered all over the country. So as we work deeper with this, I can only imagine what's going to be possible from there. And they're impacting people's lives in a really positive way. So for me to be a part of something like that is just so much more fun and so much more impactful in lives, right? And it really comes down to that. Back to the same, when we master, what we taught them was a mode of objectivity. We gave them a common language so that they could understand themselves, so that they could really start to master themselves. Because you hear it paid lip service all the time, There's no such thing as time management. There's no such thing as stress management. It's all self-management, right? But what does it really mean, and how the heck do you do that? So we teach people how to do that. We do it in a way that really helps them to integrate it right into their business and right into their lives, so that all of that wealth of opportunity for the problems, quote unquote problems that we encounter, all the stress that we encounter in our daily lives, in our work, is able to be utilized for our own growth in such a positive way. So that it becomes not about what's happening in our day, it really becomes about how we're meeting it. That's the difference between really successful people and people who get stuck in ruts. It's how we meet it. It's how you take the problems and create opportunities out of it. And it always comes back home. This is the best part and the worst part. And this is the one, maybe there'll be ongoing conversations about this. If you got questions, come find me. I'll be around all weekend. But it is all rooted in self-centric thinking. That is not to say that all self-centered thinking is bad. That is to say that if you're suffering, it is because of self-centric thinking. Now, the tough part about that, the tough reality is that, I might be responsible. The best part about it is that you always have a path home. You always know where to look to get back to that place, to take it out. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. So what really is holding us back? So here's what you do. Draw some awareness. Spend a little quiet time reflecting on what you believe. There's a process of inquiry. The affirmations work great. If there's an area that you're struggling with money, relationships, whatever it is, take whatever that belief is, create a new belief, which will become your affirmation. Write that affirmation 50 times. And after every time you write it, whatever pops into your head, write that right after it. Give a voice. to the critics so that you can have a conversation instead of just being that voice that you don't really hear in the background, that we don't really address. Because that's the place where we can really create transformation. We have to be able to have the conversation first and inquire. So what's next? How do I do that? Well, it's a good thing I'm here. I'm here to help. And so what I'd really like to do is just have a conversation. I talked about the work that we do. We do it for businesses of different sizes. We work with people in different ways. And as I said, it's really not for everybody. But the only way we know that is if we have a conversation about it. Really just talk about it. So what I want to offer you is a free gift. I want to offer a strategy session. In all likelihood, you'll not just get me, you'll also get Donna on the phone. Because we work in this together, where we just sit down and hash it out. Normally we charge upwards of $250, depending on the size of the organization, up to $750 to do a strategy session like this. We're offering it to you for free. Just because of our relationship with Lynn, we love what she does. We think she's amazing. There's a huge overlap here in how we work in our businesses and how we use our greatest assets to our benefit and to the benefit of all those people that we work with. So that's why we're offering it for free. So all you have to do is go back. Donna's got a sign-up sheet. We'll need your name, we'll need your phone number. Yes, we will call you, so don't put your phone number down if you're not serious about it, because I'm relentless with that and I will call you until I get something. And an email address so that we can contact you. And we'd just love to have a conversation about it, to really talk about what's going on with you in your life. At the very least, you'll walk away with clarity and what's most important for you and what you can look at. And at most, we'll form a relationship where we work together and really make some impact. So that's what we want to do. I just want to tell you thank you for taking the time. What a great group, and look forward to seeing you throughout the weekend, everybody. So thanks for the time and have an awesome day.